Oh yeah, and if I had the island like that to do that, you wouldn't come here. You'd come here to have the conversation, right? So there is no sort of like, I'm gonna go and be taught how to grow a little bit. Somebody's gonna baby me up a step on a staircase to heaven. You don't have that, and we wouldn't give that. But there would be some structure there, right? We'd have an agenda, things to discuss. So there would be a structure there. People could contribute to it. I'd like to do that in an open process, but I would also contribute structure. The main thing I would contribute to a philosophical retreat like that individually um, is like a work I would do for people that came. Is you come and I talk to you and interview you about what you think, and I create a report, perhaps with help from other persons, that is a report on what you think. Because that's a specialty of skepticism, right? Sextus Empiricus, a skeptic, wrote about the Stoics, and he wrote about which was the other ancient philosopher? I think maybe the Epicureans. But he wrote about a lot of them, but he did a lot that we know about those two, and I think that was the other one. Sort of like being able to capture another philosophy's school of thought in a way that they could agree with. Just to be accurate. It's fun to be accurate. You don't end up having to agree with it just because you're fair and accurate. And in a way, it's because we respect all philosophies to some degree or another. And certainly, if you came and hung out on an island, if only there was some island like that, and talk about what you think, and what you get is a little bound booklet of your philosophy categorized various ways in terms of classical Western philosophy, perhaps in terms of some uh, Eastern philosophies and stuff. That's where other people might come in. We could develop a whole charting system, but I already have such a thing pretty much. I mean, I've been doing this hobby of charting people that I run into. And that's kind of the problem too, because I'm not the kind of person that's going to talk about my current confusion problems. I mean, my current cutting edge philosophy has to do with my life, what's going on in my life. And sometimes that reveal some of the things that I'm thinking about, but really not in enough detail that you could disturb my thought process. It's very important to me that my thought process on things in my particular life be sort of kept influenced really only by me, but mainly by me. Of course, it's influenced by the world, but in this deferred way that you know, that I control. So, there's issues like I can be general. Like, for example, we could talk about guilt and how I don't believe in guilt. Even if there's things I have to feel remorse for, to me, I have a certain idea of what guilt means, and I don't believe in guilt. I think guilt perpetuates the thing you feel guilty about. It's an ironic trap of a terrible way to approach facing and taking responsibility for something you've done wrong. It's also difficult to talk about because if some people can stop what they're doing with guilt in no other way, well, they just need to stop, so fine, but that's them. But in a way, I've expressed a lot of the foundational pieces of philosophy that I want to express. It's not important to me to convince you of a lot of other philosophies. Um, I'm interested in politics, but it's I've focused talking on politics a lot, but I think it lowers the standard. I mean, politics is like a stupid kind of philosophy. Now, that doesn't mean I'm above it, not at all. As I said, I've spent a lot of time discussing, focusing on politics. I believe it's important. I'm glad people do. This particular channel, I've had a chance to talk about epistemology, philosophical abstractions, which sort of get to a more fundamental core where I don't have to allow for logical fallacies and sort of simple framing techniques that go on in politics. Now, it's important in politics because it's going on in politics. It really has an affect. But it's nice to have a sphere where we move on. I assume in the political sphere they've got to move on. We've discovered logical fallacies and categorized them, cataloged them, defined them, studied them for 2,000 years. Some of these that are still used every day in politics, and we're never going to solve that. It turns out the only way we're going to win in politics is to have better metaphors. Um, and the problem with being let's modern or progressive, which, remember, classical conservatism is not a monarchistic um, philosophy, and it is also progressive. People have different ideas of progress. It's one of the problems, but also one of the advantages of defining progress, that you have multiple versions of progress. So yeah, it's like I need to start interviewing people. Or does anybody want to be interviewed? Because we could do Skype calls. I blogged for a couple of years. I mean, what is it they call it? I podcast. I did political podcasts. I interviewed some interesting people, including people involved in some major stories, one or two. But mostly just I interviewed bloggers, political bloggers. And it's I never did a podcast. Well, maybe I did once or something anyway, but I did big pieces alone, really. But basically, it was always about that, and I prepared for the interview, and I didn't do them alone. And when I started on YouTube, I thought that would be maybe. I'm not sure I wanted to do that. And actually, I think I'm good, though I interrupt and talk over people. I'm actually good at getting people's ideas out, because even though I interrupt, the part that I'm listening to, I sort of grok and get that. And when I do interrupt, it's honestly to get more information. I'm not just trying to flood you with my ideas. At least not if I go into interview mode. If I'm going into this video mode here, it can be that way. Or in Stick'em, where it's just like, stand up and for yourself, argument, fight. But when I am just a master of ceremonies, and I don't have to assert control in a conversation, and I'm trying to interview somebody, I can really elucidate. I feel very satisfied with how much of my philosophy gets in. Because as I say, part of skepticism is just, how do you process other philosophies? It's relativism. How do you process and take other philosophies into account, think about them? And that displays your skepticism, because the skepticism is about using all the philosophies we know, including unique ones the skeptic have invented, but also all the other ones that we have access to because we've learned them and we've stated them in a way that's fair to them. So that in whatever situations, be they rare or common, where those philosophies apply or give some insight, they're available to us. So yeah, Island.